There is a base in the American heartland where the lights never fully go out, where someone is always awake, always working, always training, where the mess hall serves thousands of meals before the sun comes up and thousands more after it goes down, where doctors treat injuries, mechanics fix vehicles, chaplains counsel young soldiers carrying weight they cannot describe to their families back home. Where a 20-year-old private from a small town in Georgia is learning what it means to be part of something larger than himself, and a 38-year-old sergeant major is making sure every single one of those lessons actually sticks. This is a major infantry base, not a forward operating base in a combat zone, not a temporary camp. A permanent, fully operational installation housing roughly 3,000 soldiers at any given time, running every single day of the year, regardless of weather, holidays, or what is happening in the rest of the world. And most Americans drive past the gates without ever knowing what is happening inside. Today we are going in. We are going to walk through an entire day at this kind of base. We are going to follow the food, the training, the sleeping arrangements, the medical care, the maintenance, the command structure, and the hundreds of invisible systems that keep 3,000 human beings mission ready around the clock. Because this is not just a story about the military. This is a story about what it actually takes to sustain a fighting force, the real logistics, the real human cost, the real daily grind behind the uniform. If you have respect for the men and women who put on that uniform every single morning, type it in the comments right now. And before we go any further, take 5 seconds to subscribe. Over 98% of people watching this right now are not subscribed. It costs you absolutely nothing, and it means everything to keeping stories like this one alive. Now let's start at the beginning. And on a military base, the beginning is earlier than most civilians can imagine. It is 4:30 in the morning. The sky is still completely black. The temperature outside might be 40 degrees or it might be below freezing depending on the season and the location of this base. But inside the barracks, lights are already beginning to cut through the dark. Soldiers are rolling out of their bunks, and when we say rolling out, we do not mean slowly stretching and reaching for a phone. We mean feet on the floor, standing upright, moving. Because at 4:30 on a training day, there is no margin. Physical training, what soldiers call PT, begins at 5 or 5:30 depending on the unit's schedule. And before that happens, there are uniforms to put on, boots to lace, accountability formations to attend, and in many cases, preparation that has to happen before the preparation begins. Let's talk about where these soldiers sleep first, because it sets the stage for everything else. The barracks on a major infantry base are not what most people picture when they think of military housing. They are not tents. They are not open warehouse bays full of cots lined up side by side, though that style of housing did exist for most of American military history and still appears in certain training environments. On a modern installation, the standard barracks building for junior enlisted soldiers, specifically those at the ranks of private through specialist or corporal, is a multi-story concrete or brick structure that looks from the outside like a mid-range dormitory or a modest apartment complex. Each soldier at the E1 through E3 level typically shares a room with one other soldier. 2 bunks, 2 wall lockers, 2 desks. One small bathroom shared between the 2 occupants or between a suite of 2 rooms. The room itself is roughly 10 by 12 feet. It is not large. When you factor in 2 bunks, 2 sets of gear, 2 rifles in the arms room or secured in the room itself, 2 human beings and all their personal belongings, the space fills up quickly. What is on the walls is strictly regulated. What is on the floor is strictly regulated. How the bunk is made, how the locker is organized, what time lights are out, all of it exists within a structure that is deliberate. Because a soldier who cannot maintain their personal space cannot be trusted to maintain their equipment. And a soldier who cannot maintain their equipment cannot be trusted with a mission. Soldiers at the rank of E4 specialist with sufficient time in service, and E5 sergeant and above typically have single rooms. This is one of the first tangible privileges that comes with rank. Not a bigger room, not a better building, just the right to close a door and exist alone for a few hours each night. For many young soldiers who came from crowded households or who have been sharing space with dozens of other people since basic training, that single room is genuinely meaningful. It is a place to decompress, to call home without someone else listening, to sit in silence for 10 minutes before going back to the grind. Staff sergeants and above, particularly those with families, often live off post in rented homes or on post in family housing, which is a separate network of neighborhoods built within the installation itself. We will come back to the family housing piece later. But for now, understand that the 3,000 soldiers on this base are spread across multiple housing environments, from shared rooms in the barracks to standalone family homes, and that every single one of those environments is managed, maintained, and regulated by the installation. Now let's get back to 4:30 in the morning because the day is already moving. The first thing a soldier does when they wake up is not eat breakfast. It is accountability. Every unit in the army operates on the principle that every soldier must be located and confirmed present at all times. This is not bureaucratic formality. In a wartime environment, knowing exactly where every one of your people are at every moment is the difference between a successful mission and a catastrophic one. So the habit is built in peacetime, practiced every single day until it becomes reflex. Accountability formations happen at the beginning and end of every duty day and on some units multiple times throughout. A squad leader counts their soldiers. That count goes to the platoon sergeant. The platoon sergeant rolls it up to the first sergeant. The first sergeant reports to the company commander. The process takes minutes when it runs smoothly, but the discipline behind it has taken years to build. After accountability, soldiers change into their physical training uniform and head out. Physical fitness is not an optional part of the infantry soldier's day. It is foundational. An infantry soldier who cannot move their own body efficiently over sustained distance under load is a liability to everyone around them. So the Army invests heavily in building and maintaining that physical capacity every single day, not just in basic training, not just before a deployment, but continuously every morning for the entire length of a soldier's career. What PT actually looks like varies significantly by unit. Some units run a lot, 3 to 5 miles at a time, sometimes faster than most civilians have ever moved on foot in their lives. Other units focus on strength training, which on a large base means access to weight rooms and multiple fitness centers scattered across the installation. Still others conduct what is called unit PT, which means the entire formation does the same exercise together at the same time. Push-ups, sit-ups, jumping jacks, exercises that are simple in isolation but punishing when pushed to the volume and pace that a good first sergeant demands. And then there are the combat-focused PT sessions that blur the line between fitness and training. Soldiers moving in full kit, carrying rifles, low-crawling through grass, sprinting between positions, dragging simulated casualties across open ground. These sessions are not comfortable. They are designed not to be. Because the moment this base deploys those soldiers to a real environment, comfort will be completely irrelevant. PT ends somewhere between 6:30 and 7:30 depending on the session. Soldiers shower, change into their duty uniform and move to the next event. And for thousands of people doing this simultaneously, that next event often involves breakfast, which means it is time to talk about one of the most important and most underappreciated operations on any military installation: the dining facility. On a major infantry base housing 3,000 soldiers, there are typically multiple dining facilities, also called DFACs or chow halls, distributed across the installation. Each one is a full commercial kitchen operation running on a military schedule, which means it opens early, serves fast, and feeds large numbers of people in a relatively short window of time. The largest dining facilities on a major base can seat several hundred soldiers at one time and serve over 1,000 meals in a single breakfast period. Let's talk about what that actually looks like logistically, because the scale is staggering when you break it down. A dining facility serving 3,000 soldiers across a full day, including breakfast, lunch, and dinner, is preparing somewhere between 8,000 and 12,000 individual meal servings per day depending on attendance and meal structure. That number includes the soldiers who eat every meal at the DFAC, the soldiers who eat 2 out of 3, the soldiers pulling duty who eat at odd hours, and the add-ons from training exercises, visiting units, and special events. The kitchen staff managing this is a combination of Army culinary specialists, which is an actual military occupational specialty, supported by contracted civilian food service workers on most large installations. The culinary specialist, the 92G in Army classification, is a trained professional. They attend an 8-week course at Fort Gregg Adams in Virginia, where they learn everything from basic food safety and knife technique to quantity cooking, dietary management, and field feeding operations. The civilian contractors handle much of the daily routine cooking on large permanent installations, but the military culinary specialists are still there, managing quality, conducting inspections, running field feeding when the unit takes the kitchen on the road during training exercises. Breakfast at the DFAC typically opens around 6 in the morning and runs until about 8. The menu is built for caloric density and variety. Scrambled eggs, fried eggs cooked to order, bacon, sausage links, sausage patties, biscuits, gravy, oatmeal, fresh fruit, yogurt, cereal, toast, pancakes on some days, waffles on others. The short-order cook station is usually the most popular line. A soldier who just finished a 5-mile run in below freezing temperatures is not interested in a light breakfast. They are interested in protein, carbohydrates, and enough calories to sustain them through whatever the next 4 hours bring. The process of getting through the breakfast line is itself a small exercise in military efficiency. Soldiers pick up a tray at the entrance. They move through the serving line at a pace that is faster than a restaurant but more organized than a school cafeteria. The servers are efficient, portions are standardized, and the goal is to move people through and seat it as quickly as possible so that the formation is done eating and moving to the next event before the training schedule slips. A commanding officer who allows his soldiers to turn a 30-minute breakfast window into a 90-minute social event is a commanding officer who is going to be behind schedule all day long. And in the Army, falling behind schedule is not a minor inconvenience. It is a leadership failure with real consequences. Payment for meals is handled through a system tied to the soldier's pay. Most junior enlisted soldiers eat at the DFAC at no charge because their basic allowance for subsistence is already factored into their compensation structure in a way that accounts for this. Soldiers who live off post or who have chosen to receive their food allowance separately are technically paying for their meals, but the system is structured so that the process is seamless. Nobody is fumbling for a wallet in a chow line at 6 in the morning. Now here is something most civilians never think about. The DFAC does not just feed soldiers during normal duty hours. It feeds them around the clock because a military installation does not pause at night. Soldiers pulling guard duty need to eat. Soldiers coming off a 12-hour shift at the motor pool need to eat. The staff duty officer sitting behind a desk at 2 in the morning making sure the installation stays accounted for through the night needs to eat. Some DFACs maintain a midnight ration or a reduced hours service specifically for the overnight population. Others have contracted with commercial vendors to provide meal options during those windows. But the principle is constant. No soldier on this base goes without a meal because the meal service stopped. That is a commitment the installation takes seriously. After breakfast, the duty day begins in earnest. Understanding what 3,000 infantry soldiers actually do all day requires understanding the different categories of soldiers on a major installation and the different demands on each category's time. The first category is the training soldier. This is the largest group. These are the infantry units, the rifle companies, the weapons platoons, the reconnaissance elements, the support elements attached to the brigade that are in what the Army calls a training cycle. Depending on where they fall in the deployment readiness rotation, they might be building basic individual skills, working on crew-level collective tasks, or executing large-scale collective training exercises that bring an entire battalion together in the field. Their days are driven almost entirely by the training schedule, a document produced weeks in advance by the battalion and brigade staff that maps every hour of every training day against a specific task, condition, and standard. When the training schedule says rifle qualification at 0800, 1,500 soldiers are moving toward ranges at 0800. When it says land navigation at 1300, soldiers are being dropped in a forest with a compass and a map. The training schedule is law. The second category is the institutional soldier. These are people assigned to the installation itself rather than to a deployable unit. They work in the headquarters buildings, the administrative offices, the finance offices, the legal offices, the logistics command. They wear the same uniform, they attend the same PT in the morning, but their daily rhythm more closely resembles a government office worker than a field soldier. They work 8 to 5 schedules more frequently, they attend more meetings, they produce more paperwork, and they spend less time in the field. This is not a criticism. These soldiers are performing essential functions that keep the entire installation running. The finance soldier who processes pay correctly every month is ensuring that 3,000 families can pay their rent. The legal specialist who handles a soldier's Article 15 proceeding is ensuring that the disciplinary system functions fairly. These roles matter. They are just less visible than the soldier running through a forest at midnight. The third category is the duty soldier. At any given moment, a significant percentage of the base's population is assigned to various duty positions that rotate across the unit. Staff duty officer, staff duty NCO, charge of quarters, fire guard, gate guard at certain installations. These positions exist to maintain continuous coverage of the installation's essential functions. The staff duty officer, typically a lieutenant or captain, sits in a battalion headquarters office from the time the normal duty day ends until it begins again the next morning. They are the point of contact for any emergency involving their unit's soldiers. If a soldier gets arrested off post at midnight, the call goes to staff duty. If there is a medical emergency in the barracks, staff duty is notified. If a soldier goes AWOL, staff duty is the first military point of contact for the military police. It is not a glamorous position. It involves a lot of sitting, a lot of waiting, and occasional bursts of genuine crisis management. Now let's talk about what happens between breakfast and lunch, because in those 4 to 5 hours, the work of building a ready infantry force actually happens. On the ranges, range operations on a large infantry installation are a continuous undertaking. There are rifle ranges, pistol ranges, machine gun ranges, anti-armor ranges, grenade ranges, demolitions ranges, night firing ranges equipped with thermal targets and infrared illumination. A major installation might have 20 or 30 distinct range facilities of various types spread across tens of thousands of acres of training land. Each range requires a range safety officer, certified by the installation, to be present and in control whenever live fire is occurring. Range operations require advanced coordination with the installation range control office weeks in advance, because every range is a shared resource and 3,000 soldiers all competing for the same dirt is a scheduling problem that requires deliberate management. When a rifle company goes to the range for qualification day, it is an operation unto itself. The company typically moves by vehicle convoy from the company area to the range. Ammunition has been drawn from the installation's ammunition supply point, a separate facility with its own security requirements, accountability procedures, and specialist staff. The ammunition draw alone requires paperwork, physical accountability of each round, and a chain of custody that is never broken. When the company arrives at the range safety officer does a safety brief. Weapons are inspected, firing orders are issued, and then the qualification begins. Soldiers fire at pop-up targets at ranges from 50 to 300 meters. They must engage a certain number of targets successfully to achieve a passing score. Those who pass are qualified. Those who do not pass get remediation training and a second attempt. Those who still cannot qualify face counseling, additional training, and in some cases administrative action. Because in the infantry, weapons qualification is not optional. It is not an elective. It is a minimum standard for continued service. In the motor pool, a completely different kind of work is happening. The motor pool is the vehicle maintenance area. On a major infantry installation, this is a massive complex of maintenance bays, vehicle parking lots, tool rooms, parts supply areas, and administrative offices that looks like a combination of an industrial garage and a logistics warehouse. The vehicles it houses include everything from light tactical wheeled vehicles like the JLTV and the HMMWV, which most people know as the Humvee, to larger trucks, to armored fighting vehicles, Bradley infantry fighting vehicles, Strykers on Stryker-equipped installations, and the massive support vehicles that carry fuel, ammunition, and equipment. Every single one of these vehicles has a maintenance schedule. Every single one must be inspected, serviced, and certified as fully mission-capable before a unit deploys. The maintenance companies attached to infantry brigades exist specifically to manage this work, but individual unit maintenance is also the responsibility of every squad leader, platoon leader, and company commander who owns vehicles. A commander who allows his motor pool to fall into disrepair is a commander whose battalion commander is going to hear about it, and not in a positive way. In the field miles away from the main post area, elements of the brigade might already be living in the field, not deployed, not in combat, but in a field training environment on the installation's training land. These soldiers sleep in fighting positions or temporary patrol bases. They eat meals ready to eat, the MRE, the military's individual field ration. They operate under conditions deliberately designed to mirror what they would face in a real operational environment. No showers. Minimal sleep, continuous movement. Leadership decisions made under physical and mental stress at 2 in the morning in the rain. This kind of training is where infantry soldiers are genuinely forged, not in the classroom, not in the gym, in the field, tired and cold and still required to perform. The MRE deserves its own moment here because it is a signature element of Army life that virtually every veteran has opinions about. The meal ready to eat is a self-contained individual ration that can be eaten without any preparation whatsoever but is significantly more palatable when the included flameless ration heater is used. Each MRE contains an entree, a side dish, bread or crackers, a spread, a dessert, a beverage base, an accessory packet with things like salt, gum, and a small bottle of Tabasco sauce, and the flameless heater that uses a chemical reaction to generate enough heat to warm the entree. There are currently 24 different MRE menus. Some are universally loved, some are universally despised. The beef stew is generally considered good. The veggie burger has generated enough collective soldier resentment to fill its own book. Trading MRE components is a small but persistent element of military culture. A soldier who does not want their peanut butter but desperately wants a second-pound cake has a negotiating partner somewhere in that patrol base. These small transactions are not trivial. They are part of how soldiers maintain human connection and a small sense of agency inside an environment that controls almost everything else about their lives. By noon, the base has been running for 7 or 8 hours. The second major feeding event of the day begins. Lunch at the DFAC or in field environments, lunch in whatever form the unit has access to. For soldiers on post, the lunch period is typically 30 minutes to an hour depending on the training schedule. The DFAC serves a hot lunch with a variety of main course options: starch, vegetables, salad bar, dessert, and beverages. The lunch crowd at a large DFAC is impressive to watch. Hundreds of soldiers moving through the line efficiently, filling their trays, eating quickly, refilling water bottles, and heading back out. There is not a lot of sitting and lingering at a military lunch. The schedule does not accommodate it. But the afternoon is when some of the most important non-training work on the installation happens. This is when the medical and dental systems are running at full capacity. The medical system on a major infantry base is a significant undertaking. The installation's health clinic, sometimes expanded to a hospital on very large installations, handles primary care, preventive medicine, occupational health, mental health, physical therapy, dental care, optometry, pharmacy services, and emergency care. 3,000 soldiers generate a constant and varied stream of medical need: training injuries, stress fractures from prolonged rucking, sprains, lacerations from field training. The routine sick call population who show up each morning with illnesses, infections, and the accumulated wear of physical jobs performed daily on young bodies that are working harder than almost any civilian their age. The mental health component is increasingly recognized as critical. Multiple deployments, family separation, the cumulative weight of service, and the unique psychological demands of infantry life generate real mental health needs that the installation's behavioral health staff addresses daily. Getting soldiers to actually use those services has been a long-standing cultural challenge in the Army. But the services are there, staffed by military and civilian professionals, operating on a base that takes the obligation of care for its people seriously. The dental clinic is similarly busy. 3,000 soldiers, all due for annual dental examinations, all required to maintain dental readiness that meets deployment standards, represent a continuous workload for the installation's dental team. A soldier with an unresolved dental issue significant enough to require urgent care during a deployment is a readiness liability. The dental readiness system exists to prevent that, which means regular examinations, preventive treatment, and addressing problems before they become emergencies. The pharmacy issues prescriptions. The optometry clinic fits glasses and contacts. The physical therapy clinic works with the enormous population of soldiers managing injuries that are not serious enough to take them off duty but painful enough that without treatment they will become serious. The Army's culture around injury and toughness creates a challenge here. Soldiers are trained to push through pain. That is an essential quality in combat. But the soldier who refuses to report a worsening stress fracture because they do not want to appear weak will eventually fracture completely. And the recovery from a complete fracture is measured in months rather than weeks. The medical system on a major installation is constantly working against this cultural grain, encouraging early reporting, early treatment, and proactive management of the physical wear that comes with infantry service. In the afternoon, the legal office is also running. The installation's Judge Advocate General team, the JAG Corps, handles a remarkable range of legal matters for 3,000 soldiers and their families. Powers of attorney for soldiers deploying, who need to give spouses the legal authority to manage finances, sign documents, and make decisions in their absence. Wills, because infantry soldiers deploying to combat environments need wills and many of them are 22 years old and have never thought about one. Consumer protection issues. Soldiers who have signed bad contracts, who have been targeted by the predatory lending operations that tend to cluster around military installations, preying on young people with steady paychecks and limited financial experience. Landlord-tenant disputes for soldiers living off post, family law issues. Administrative separations. The Article 15 non-judicial punishment proceedings that are the Army's primary disciplinary tool for offenses below the level of a court-martial. The JAG office on a busy installation is never slow. The finance office is processing pay actions, housing allowance adjustments, travel claims, separation pay, re-enlistment bonuses, and the endless stream of corrections and inquiries that come when 3,000 people are receiving paychecks with multiple components calculated against a complex set of rules that most of them did not fully understand when they signed their enlistment contracts. Junior soldiers' military pay includes base pay, basic allowance for housing if they live off post, basic allowance for subsistence, any special pay they qualify for such as hazardous duty pay or parachutist pay, and tax exclusions and adjustments for deployment status. Getting all of those components right for every soldier every month is the finance office's responsibility, and when it goes wrong, the consequences for a soldier trying to pay rent or buy groceries are immediate and real. Meanwhile, in the afternoon, the training continues. Situational training exercises, called SDXs, take small units through tactical scenarios in a controlled environment on the installation's training land. A squad practices entering and clearing a room in one of the shoot house facilities, a purpose-built structure specifically designed for close-quarters battle training. A platoon works through a react-to-contact drill, responding to a simulated ambush with the disciplined fire and movement that can mean the difference between a successful break contact and catastrophic casualties. A company command post exercise, called a CPX, runs the company's command and control systems under stress, with the battalion staff injecting scenarios that test the company commander and their team's ability to plan, communicate, and adapt. Leaders at every level are being evaluated continuously during these exercises. The squad leader who freezes at the first injection of chaos. The platoon leader who issues unclear orders under pressure and watches their platoon fall apart. The company XO who cannot keep track of the logistics picture while the commander is focused on the fight. These are the gaps that training exists to find and fix before they appear in a real operational environment, where the cost of the gap is not a bad evaluation but a soldier's life. The evaluators, experienced NCOs and officers who run these exercises, are not there to make soldiers feel good. They are there to find every single weakness in a unit's ability to fight and win, and to drive those weaknesses into the ground through repetition, correction, and repetition again. By late afternoon, the duty day begins to wind down for the garrison soldiers, the institutional and administrative population. For the training soldiers, wind down is relative. A unit in the middle of an intensive training cycle might run an evening training event after dinner, night vision operations, night land navigation, a tactical movement that begins at 2000 and does not end until midnight. The infantry is an organization that genuinely trains to fight at night, because the modern American military has invested heavily in night vision technology that gives American soldiers a significant advantage over most potential adversaries in low-light conditions. But that advantage only exists if the soldiers are trained, proficient, and comfortable operating in the dark. So the training happens in the dark on this installation on a Tuesday night in November, with soldiers wearing third-generation night observation devices and moving through the tree lines of the training area with the quiet, deliberate confidence that hundreds of hours of this exact training has built. Dinner at the DFAC happens in the early evening. The menu shifts to dinner options: hot entrees, protein selections, starches, vegetables, a salad bar, typically something recognizable as a real meal, not unlike what a family might eat at a casual restaurant but produced at a scale that would be difficult to fully appreciate until you see the kitchen operation behind it. The evening DFAC crowd is more relaxed than breakfast. Soldiers are off the training schedule, at least nominally, for the first time all day. Conversation at the tables is easier. There is slightly more time to sit, eat, and actually taste the food. After dinner, the evening hours on a major installation take on a different character depending on what a soldier's status is. For soldiers who are not on duty and not on a night training event, the evening is their own time within certain limits. The installation has recreation facilities that serve this population specifically, fitness centers that stay open late for soldiers who want to do additional personal training after the unit PT session in the morning, a movie theater on some large installations, bowling alleys, basketball courts, recreation centers with pool tables, gaming systems, and common areas. The post-exchange, known as the PX, which is essentially a department store on the installation, operates evening hours so soldiers can shop for personal items, electronics, clothing, and the various items that make barracks life slightly more comfortable. Commissary hours allow soldiers and their families to grocery shop in the evenings. Restaurants on the installation, typically a mix of fast food chains and sit-down options contracted to operate on the installation, serve the evening population. The Army's Morale, Welfare, and Recreation Program, known as MWR, operates many of these facilities. MWR exists specifically to provide quality-of-life programs for soldiers and families, and on a major installation the MWR program is substantial. It includes child development centers, youth sports leagues, outdoor recreation rental facilities, travel and tickets offices that provide discounted access to local events, and the recreational facilities described above. MWR is not just a nicety, it is a retention and readiness tool. A soldier whose family has access to affordable childcare, whose children can play organized sports, whose spouse can access a gym and a social support network on the installation, is a soldier who is more likely to re-enlist. And a force that cannot retain its experienced soldiers cannot be effective. The barracks at night are quieter but never silent. Charge of quarters, a duty position held by a lower enlisted soldier under the supervision of an NCO, maintains a desk in each barracks building through the overnight hours. The CQ's job is to monitor the building, document who comes and goes after a certain hour, respond to any incidents, and serve as the first point of contact for soldiers who need something during the night. A soldier who gets sick in the middle of the night goes to the CQ. A soldier who loses their key contacts the CQ. The CQ logs everything and reports anything significant to the staff duty NCO. It is not an exciting position, but it is an important one, and the discipline of pulling it without complaint at 2 in the morning when the duty roster assigned you to it is its own small exercise in military professionalism. Now let's step back from the individual soldier's experience for a moment and look at the installation itself. Because 3,000 soldiers do not operate in isolation, they are supported by a vast infrastructure that most of the American public has no concept of. The installation headquarters runs the garrison. This is an entirely separate command from the brigade and battalion units that train on the post. The garrison commander and their staff are responsible for the physical infrastructure of the installation: the roads, the buildings, the utilities, the ranges, the training land, the environmental compliance, the security, the housing, and the dozens of other installation support functions that keep the base operational. The garrison is essentially the city government for a small city. It manages contracts with service providers. It coordinates with local governments on issues that spill outside the installation boundaries. It maintains the physical plan of a facility that might include hundreds of buildings, miles of roads, tens of thousands of acres of land, water treatment systems, power distribution systems, and communication infrastructure. Facilities engineering is a major department within the garrison. It employs a large staff of military and civilian engineers, mechanics, and technicians whose job is to keep the installation's physical infrastructure functional. When a barracks building's heating system fails in January, facilities engineering fixes it. When a range's target mechanisms break down mid-qualification, the work order goes to facilities. When a road on the training area washes out after a heavy rain, facilities crews are out there filling it. The scale of maintenance required to keep a major installation functional is genuinely comparable to maintaining a small city, because that is functionally what it is. The Environmental Office manages the installation's compliance with federal and state environmental regulations. This is not a trivial matter. A major installation with live fire ranges, motor pools full of vehicles leaking oil and fuel, chemical storage facilities, and thousands of acres of land being driven over by tracked and wheeled vehicles generates significant environmental considerations. Unexploded ordnance on old ranges, fuel spills at vehicle maintenance facilities. Wastewater treatment, endangered species habitat management on the training land, which at many installations is actually some of the most ecologically intact land in the region precisely because it has been kept free of commercial development. The Environmental Office works to manage all of these issues in a way that keeps the installation mission capable while meeting its legal and moral obligations as a steward of the land it occupies. Installation security is another major operation. Military police on a major installation work around the clock. They patrol the installation roads. They staff the entry control points where every vehicle entering the base is checked. They respond to incidents involving soldiers and family members on post. They coordinate with the installation's Criminal Investigation Command, the CID, on serious offenses. They operate a corrections facility for soldiers sentenced to confinement for lesser offenses. They manage access control for the hundreds of civilian contractors who work on the installation daily. And they serve as the first response force for any security threat to the installation itself. The Chaplain Corps deserves its own serious discussion because the work chaplains do on a major infantry installation is among the most humanly significant work happening anywhere on that base. A major installation has multiple chaplains assigned across its units and at the installation level. These are commissioned officers who have received theological education and endorsement through their religious faith groups before commissioning. They serve soldiers of all faith traditions and of no faith tradition. They are the confidential counselors who soldiers can speak to with an absolute assurance that the conversation will go nowhere else, not to the chain of command, not to the medical system, not anywhere. That privilege, the chaplain's privilege, is one of the most important tools available to a military pastoral care system that is dealing with some of the most serious human pain imaginable. Soldiers returning from combat with wounds that do not show on any scan. Marriages fracturing under the strain of repeated deployments. Young soldiers far from home for the first time, carrying guilt or grief or fear that they have been trained to believe they cannot show to anyone in their chain of command. The chaplain's office is where some of those burdens get set down, carefully and confidentially, by soldiers who would not go anywhere else. Chaplains also conduct worship services for every faith community represented on the installation. Protestant services, Catholic Mass, Jewish services, Muslim Friday prayers, Buddhist meditation groups, secular mindfulness programs, non-denominational gatherings. On a large installation, the chapel complex is a genuinely busy place, serving a population whose spiritual needs are real and varied and worthy of serious attention. A soldier facing deployment wants to pray. A soldier who has just lost a battle buddy wants to grieve. A soldier who is questioning everything they thought they believed wants to talk. The chaplain is there for all of it. The school system on a major installation is another dimension of this community that most outsiders never think about. 3,000 soldiers, a substantial fraction of whom have families, means thousands of dependent children. On or adjacent to most major installations, there are schools operated either by the Department of Defense Dependent School System or by the local public school district that specifically serve the military child population. These schools deal with a student body that turns over significantly each time a large unit deploys or returns, each time families PCS, which is the Army term for a permanent change of station, a move to a new assignment. Military children are among the most resilient and most frequently uprooted children in America, moving every 2 to 3 years, changing schools, making new friends, losing old ones, adapting to new communities, new teachers, new curricula. The schools that serve them are attuned to this reality in ways that civilian schools often are not. The child development centers on the installation are critical to the functioning of the force. A soldier cannot show up to PT at 5 in the morning if they cannot find childcare for a toddler at 5 in the morning. The CDCs operate on schedules designed to accommodate military duty hours, which means early opening times, late closing times, and flexibility for soldiers whose duty days do not fit a 9-to-5 structure. The demand for CDC slots on a major installation almost always exceeds supply, and the waiting lists can be long. This is one of the most persistent quality of life challenges facing the military family, and it is a retention issue with real consequences. Let's come back to the command structure because understanding how 3,000 soldiers are organized and led is essential to understanding how this entire system actually functions. Major infantry installation is typically home to Brigade Combat Team. The Brigade Combat Team is the Army's primary combined arms unit of action. It consists of multiple infantry battalions, a cavalry squadron that provides reconnaissance and security, a fires battalion that provides artillery support, a brigade support battalion that provides logistics, medical, and maintenance support, and a brigade special troops battalion that provides intelligence, signal, and engineer capabilities. The whole formation numbers roughly 4,000 to 5,000 soldiers in its full complement, though the base might house only some of those units at any given time while others are deployed, training elsewhere, or in transition. At the top of this formation is the brigade commander, typically a colonel, a full colonel known by their pay grade as an 06. This is a person who has spent roughly 20 years reaching this position. They have commanded at the company level, served on battalion and brigade staffs, commanded a battalion, and been selected through a competitive process to take the most senior command position available to a colonel in the combat arms. The brigade commander is responsible for the training, readiness, welfare, and discipline of every soldier in their formation. When the brigade deploys, the brigade commander goes with it. When the brigade is at home station training, every training decision of consequence comes through the brigade command. The brigade commander has a small personal staff and an aide-de-camp, a junior officer whose job is to manage the commander's schedule, travel, and administrative load so that the commander's time is spent on the highest priority decisions rather than logistics and paperwork. Below the brigade commander is the brigade command sergeant major, the CSM. This is the most senior NCO in the brigade, typically a soldier with 25 to 30 years of service, a person who has spent their entire career in the infantry, who has been a rifle team leader, a squad leader, a platoon sergeant, a first sergeant, and a sergeant major at the battalion level before reaching this position. The CSM is not in the chain of command in the formal sense. They are not a commander. But their influence on the formation, specifically on the NCO Corps and on the welfare and standards of the enlisted force, is profound. When the brigade CSM walks through the motor pool and asks a specialist how their maintenance training is going, that specialist knows that their answer is going to reach the brigade commander's ear within 24 hours. The CSM is the enlisted voice at the highest level of the brigade, and an effective CSM is one of the most powerful positive forces in a military unit. Below the brigade level are the battalion commanders, typically lieutenant colonels 05s, each commanding a battalion of between 500 and 800 soldiers depending on the unit type. The battalion commander is in many ways the most important operational leader in the Army, senior enough to have real authority and real resources, junior enough to still be connected to the daily reality of company-level leadership. The battalion's training program is the battalion commander's program. Their philosophy about how soldiers should train, how leaders should lead, how standards should be enforced, shapes the experience of every soldier in that formation every single day. The company commanders, captains, are the ground-level commanders who lead the soldiers who actually execute the mission. A rifle company commander has 120 to 200 soldiers depending on the company type. They know many of those soldiers by name. They attend to their welfare directly. They make decisions about training, discipline, leave, and welfare that immediately affect real people's lives. The company commander is where the Army's institutional values and priorities meet the individual soldier's daily experience. A great company commander can make an ordinary battalion extraordinary. A poor company commander can damage a great battalion in months. And then there is the first sergeant. The first sergeant is the most senior NCO in the company and in many respects the person who most shapes what a soldier's daily life actually feels like. The first sergeant runs the day-to-day administrative and disciplinary machine of the company. They know every soldier's status. They know who is in the medical system, who is on a performance improvement plan, who has family problems affecting their duty performance, who is the absolute best performer in the company, and who is the person that needs to be counseled this week. The first sergeant is simultaneously a mentor.